Y'all hear that? Recording in progress. Okay, we're set. We'll talk about whatever you'd like to talk about today, but our theme for the past week was wu-wei and all the implications of that. And I've certainly been looking at it this week. I'll just kind of share how it comes for me. I was trained very carefully as a child to be quite afraid that life was a fearful thing, and I may or may not be able to handle it. My mother was a very fearful person, and I learned the lesson quite well. I've overcome it in lots and lots of other ways, but weather, interestingly, for a Taoist, weather is one of those areas where my anxiety gets hooked. So as summer turned to fall, and then quickly fall has turned to storms, and on the verge of fall storms, winter storms, that anxiety starts to build up. And in so many other areas of my life, I can sink into what I'd call spacious awareness and wu-wei when working on a project or driving or many other areas. But when I sit and watch the wind and the rain and the storm batter against the cabin, something shifts inside of me. And instead of being in wu-wei, I shift to effort. That somehow I can calm this anxiety by having it by my own efforts. And I just got a sign that said my internet connection is unstable. So for whatever that's worth, maybe by my efforts, I can make it stable again. Okay. So I've noticed that if I can slip into the wu-wei, instead of concentrating on ending the anxiety, I just simply sit there with the anxiety, watch the branches, watch the wind, watch the rain, and let myself be a bit more spacious in my observations. That the anxiety just naturally takes a wu-wei pathway into subsiding. It's been fun. I've discovered more and more about wu-wei this this past week. And in so many places in our life, we've been trained to think that effort is the way through. And effort is never the way through. Effort narrows the creative bandwidth. Effort focuses on the problem rather than the spaciousness. Effort focuses on a narrow pathway and says that if you can just keep going the way you've always handled this with a little bit more effort, you'll be able to get through. That's culturally deeply embedded, that the person who doesn't put forth enough effort is the person who ends up failing. And Lao Tzu says that the person who steps back from effort and steps into wu-wei is the person who succeeds. It's a strange paradox, it really is. But I'm seeing it more and more, especially as I get older. More and more of the ways that I've been conditioned to put forth effort to solve problems start appearing. And as I get older also, effort doesn't work as well anymore. And I get to realize that effortless living, yeah. I mean, I've been talking about it for 45 years. And here it is again. Oh, that's what it means. Effortless living. So how's your effort filled or effortless week been going? What's been going on? Doreen.
Hi. It's been an interesting week because we in Chico, similar to Mount Shasta, though we don't get snow, but we have segued from pretty much from summer into winter, which is extremely exciting on one level because I get to let go of that angst-ridden, anxiety-filled Chico summers that I've had to learn to live with, but despise and make me want to move from Chico. But there's so many things I love in Chico, including the people. At any rate, so there's that push and pull of letting go of the summer that I've learned to do since I have my go bag ready. I have the kitty carriers ready, kitty food, everything I need ready, and some things in my car. So I've done everything I can, just let go and see what happens. And now we're into winter, and I found myself scurrying around. Where are the flashlights? Do I have flashlights easily reachable in every room? And I ordered another flashlight, the Zoom flashlight, the high lumens, the LED, so I can charge it in my car or, and just this monkey mind just going round and round. Am I ready? And I'm like, okay, Doreen, how many more flashlights do you really need? You're gonna be ready. You know this house. I could be blind and live in this house. I know my way. I've been here 18 years, so I know my way. Well, 14 actually. I know my way around really well. And just that letting go and just having less effort and realizing it's all going to happen as it happens. I don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
And everything will be fine. I'll survive.
Yeah. Or you won't.
Or there'll be some repercussions that I'll deal with. And my kitties, the kitties are always fine. So yeah, that's been my wu-wei.
Yeah, that the conditioned habit is effort.
Mm-hmm.
Have you prepared well enough? So whatever it is you think is being faced, have you prepared well enough? Well, I can guarantee you that in the conditioned mind, you haven't.
Yeah.
There's always something else to do. You haven't. Did you think about, how about, thank you, Doreen.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, Liz.
That was making me think. So I had 2 weeks over last Christmas and New Year with no heating, and it was extremely cold. So I went into panic mode because we've got gas shortages, potentially all kinds in this country. So I've been desperately trying to buy heaters in case I don't have gas. Wow. Because what I did last year didn't work. I was just frozen for 2 weeks. And it got really hard. I bought a heater that I had to go back, and now I've got another one coming. Anyhow, I've had a week of really good wu-wei apart from the heating. I never used to like this time of year. We've got every season in a day. We've got summer, winter, autumn. We've got the whole lot. And I had to go into central London for an appointment on Thursday, and it was an awful morning, a glorious afternoon. I thought, I'm going to walk all the way. It's an hour and a half each way. I never have enough time when I try to do this, but I have a lateness strategy where I just let it flow. And I knew as soon as I got on that, I went over the hill to get the whole view of London, through all the parks. I had time to do all of it. Every traffic light changed, even if I was nowhere near it. There were no people in my way. I had flow all the way there and all the way back. It was amazing.
That's
when I'm walking, I don't notice it so much if I'm driving, but often it happens. Every pedestrian crossing, it just changes as I arrive. I don't have to touch anything. I'm just there.
And if it doesn't change, then wu-wei happily stands and looks around.
Exactly. And I was looking at the leaves and the autumn colours. So I had a wonderful time, even though, potentially I couldn't do it in the time I had there and back, but I did it. And I felt really that happy tiredness at the end of it. There was no effort in it. I was not tired.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. What other ways do you, well, go ahead, Steve. Steve?
Just going to say, Bill, like you, I was taught and my very strict old Presbyterian mother to, strive and strive. And that's an even worse word than effort. I think to strive for everything, strive for peace, strive, and I've tried to bring more wu-wei into my life, Bill. And I've tried to keep it's. I think I like the term quiet action. I know I must take action on some things, but I don't have to strive. I can be quiet and let the as they used to say in Desiderata, let the universe unfold as it should.
It should. That's very Taoist. I laughed there. I apologize.
No problem.
That idea. It's we often use. I'm going to try to do wu-wei. You catch the paradox. By golly, I'm going to make some effort to make less effort.
Sure. Yeah.
And how do we break out of that conundrum?
It's an automatic response, Bill.
Automatic response. Yeah, that's what I was looking at with the weather. I got to get over this anxiety. Am I over it yet?
Yes.
What's wrong with me? How about some areas where Liz talked about that wonderful wu-wei walk. Are there areas where wu-wei just kind of effortlessly arises for you? Yes, Jim.
Yes, I have had a lovely sort of wu-wei morning. I really appreciated, Bill, your commentary about how you've discovered wu-wei arising in your practice of Tai Chi and Qigong. And I notice it too. It's more of I rest into this movement that arises. It's not me efforting it, and yet it's an animating force. And today, I've been trying to move more in the mornings. And today I put on some rock and roll, Linda Ronstadt and Van Morrison, and I started dancing. It's my birthday, so you got to dance on your birthday, right?
Happy birthday!
Yeah, 71. So, but I started dancing to rock and roll, and I'll tell you, talk about effortless effort. My pulse was 105, 110 at times, but I was in a place of bliss. I was just simply moving to music I love. And so I think that is a clue for me about moving to music I love, so that I carried that energy into my farming rounds. I have a big farm. I have pigs and cows and goats and ducks and geese and chickens. And I had a little bit of a time crunch this morning because my wife wanted me to go to a bakery, take me to a bakery at a local town to celebrate my birthday. But she needed to leave by 8 or 8:30. And dawn here now in North Carolina is at 7:30. So I was sorting out before dawn what my options might be to be able to get back after chores and be ready to go to the bakery. And I just sort of decided that, if I think about doing Tai Chi in my cattle pasture, which is the best view of the sunrise on my farm, that it'll allow the day to unfold in a on schedule, but sort of also unscheduled. And so I got in my little solar powered golf cart and I drove back to the cattle pastures and I watched the sunrise and I practiced Tai Chi and did the rest of my farm chores on the way back and was showered and ready to go to the bakery by 8:30, which is damn good given all that I had to do. And I didn't experience effort at all.
Yes. And everything was set up that it should have been effortful. My gosh, but That's wonderful. Other wu-wei testimonies here? Yes, Peter.
Right. Bill, something, actually the words you began with, I think, certainly really resonated with me when you used the word fear. Like hundreds and hundreds of millions of other people on the planet, I grew up in a house that was full of fear and it was very violent place, and I never ever I realized later ever felt safe, and I wasn't there, and it is something that became interwoven into my life as I grew, this sense of extreme vulnerability beyond my control. The short of it, the reason I mention it is that I think that there are so many fears that I found I had just come to accept as factual, as part of life, as necessary things that I had to solve or fix or overcome or do something about. And I did this by working extremely hard, long hours, whatever was necessary to avoid these things that were generating fear of not having enough money for my family, fear of ill health, fear of, you know, just fear of failing, fear, all of these sort of things. And it is only really over the past few years that I started to be aware of these and confront them question them, and realize how many of them were actually either phantoms or in some ways inevitable. I mean, you know, chances are that I, at some stage in my life, I'm going to die. And this is something that I think bedevils a lot of people, their tranquility, is this notion of what does it mean? What is the meaning? What is the purpose of my life between now and then? The wu-wei element comes into it for me in that I just simply stopped asking, to the best of my ability. I stopped asking these questions. I stopped allowing these fears to just go unchallenged. And I have been, working is the wrong word, but I have been actually disengaging. I've been visualizing a life in neutral. I've been visualizing that moment when you put your foot on the clutch and the gears don't mesh, and not allowing those things that were causing the fear and the activity to drive me. And it has created a much higher degree of peace. For example, today is Saturday. 3 weeks from next Tuesday, Maria and I will land in Greece. And there we will begin, we will be living there, right? We are moving to a Greek island. Dealing with the Greek authorities on moving to an island that is near Turkey involves an extraordinary amount of delay, red tape, and bureaucracy. Years ago, this would have caused me a great degree of anguish and frustration. And frankly, I couldn't care less. We'll get there when we get there. If that, you know, whatever happens will happen. We'll sort it out. What's the worst that happens? We have a delay. Who cares? We'll have a wonderful time. You know, we love each other. The world's a great place, and what does it matter? What's to be afraid of? You know. So I'm about 1 million miles short of being an exemplar of wu-wei, but I'm certainly a lot further away from the fear that was driving it. And I think that fear is something that it really touched a nerve with me when you used it at the beginning, because I think it's true and it's very powerful.
Thank you, Peter. That rooting in fear goes back to a theme that we talked about, I think, in maybe one of our first sessions, and that is the sense that we're separate, that we don't really belong to life. and wu-wei grows out of the realization that we really do belong to life. And that, for lack of a better word, life, capital L, lives itself through us. From a Christian tradition point of view, it's not I that lives, but God who lives in me. It's that sense that the Buddha nature is who I really am. That sense that I am really not separate. And when I sink into that sense that I'm actually not separate, then the fear is mitigated. And I can't conjure that sense. I can't try to feel not separate. I can just let my spotlight of attention be on the spacious awareness, and then I realize that I'm not separate, and I've used it with the weather. This is not something happening to me. This wind is not blowing on me. We're just blowing. This is all just blowing. I'm all part of it. Jim, I wanted to add to those of you who have been in the Tai Chi, Qigong tradition, there is kind of a old stodgy element of Tai Chi practice that says no music. I don't know whether you've run into that as you've been. No music. The music is a distraction. Just feel the energy. Nonsense. Luckily, I had a teacher, Al Wong, who was a ballet dancer as well, and he rid me of that. And that Jim, we show our age, but I dance, and I always start with one piece. Bob Seger's I Like That Old Time Rock and Roll. That kind of music really soothes my soul. And so you can just picture this 77-year-old man boogieing to I Like That Old Time Rock and Roll. If that amuses you. Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about for me the things that, which is all of what you're saying, for me the things that can help me come back are the senses and the music, or the being in an open space, looking at a tree, just very obviously remembering to breathe. But when I'm here, that's not always my first. I can't do that first. And actually so which is why Qigong for me has been really important in helping me find that, because it's just that if I can physically connect with that space inside me in the mornings, my day I can have a physical sense of it to take through my day, where I can come back to and if I'm outside, it's really easy to be in that place because it's just there. I'm in it. I know if I'm inside, I can find it in myself. It's just that takes me back to the breath. I can't necessarily get to the breath first, but some music or some sound or some. And this morning, and I can get an idea even in my mind about that. That's what I think is really tricky about the mind. It's like if I know that if I can find that in the morning, like with Qigong, that eases the day somewhat. But that doesn't always happen. I'm in a family of 3, and there's kind of other people who might need something from me. And I can find myself speeding up, like I'm just getting through these things because I think I've got to get to the moment when I can do Qigong so I can get back to the place I wanted to begin. And then, so this morning I just had to I was in the middle of kind of 3 things. I had done Qigong and I was getting this thing in my mind of I haven't done Qigong and I don't feel how I want to feel. And I just started moving slowly around what I was doing, instead of having the fixed idea of I need to go to the place where I do Qigong and then do it there, and then I'll feel like this, and then I can come back and start again and it'll be okay. This kind of spinning of just the thing I was doing, which was really, it was just moving some stuff around. I just started doing it really, really slowly and found that breath again in the movement of doing it. I wasn't doing Qigong, I was like, I am doing Qigong. But I need to do it here now while I'm doing this, and not have an idea in my mind of, if the day doesn't go like that, then I've lost it. The moment has passed. It's like the moment is always the moment, and I can always find it, but sometimes it's easier than others.
Thank you. That's lovely. Breath is, you mentioned breath. Breath is extremely important to come back to the moment, and in the moment we find wu-wei. And those people who have a long time meditation practice of one sort or another will say that I'm not practicing meditation to get good at meditation. I'm practicing meditation to get good at living my life, so that my life becomes a meditative. I sit in meditation as a practice for the rest of my life, not as something separate from it. And the same thing is true with Qigong and Tai Chi. I do Qigong. Now, yes, it's an exercise, and yes, it's centering, and yes, it's soothing, but it's a practice in movement and breathing and the flow of energy. And there's Tai Chi dishes, and there's Tai Chi cleaning, and there's Tai Chi reading, and there's Tai Chi chores, and there's Tai Chi driving, and it all becomes, and then even the labels drop away. It's just moving through the day. Well, another Qigong teacher I had, I might have mentioned this in the presentation, but you know, the mind will never be the place to start. If we're here, the default will always be to stay here and try to figure it out, set the schedule, and I got to get to my Qigong. You know, I got to hurry through this to get to my Qigong. And boy, I've been there. And like this other Qigong teacher, he just mentioned, we talk about monkey mind, and he said, it's not really monkey mind, it's an adolescent monkey who got into his parents' liquor cabinet mind. That's how crazy it is. And if we look to it for guidance, and we look to it for anything other than the very specific, fairly narrow, somewhat controlled things that it's supposed to be good at and does, we're in trouble. Some things it needs to do. If you're going to build a bridge, do it. You know, go there. If you're going to, whatever kind of intricate thing, yes, the conditioned mind can do that, but even then, wu-wei has to be the controlling energy. And the wu-wei moves up and through the conditioned mind. And the first chapter of the Tao Te Ching talks about I use the word conditioned mind, separates us from reality, but it's also the doorway back into reality. That wu-wei, the energy of who I naturally am, can move through the conditioned mind, and the conditioned mind in its marvelous intricacy can be the doorway back into the real thing. And Lisa, you experience that when you're outside, and it comes in through the filters of our conditioned mind, but it's a gateway, a doorway into the unconditioned wu-chi spaces. Yes, Liz.
Just another Qigong thing. My first Qigong teacher, she studied with a professor in China, and he made these CDs and then DVDs later, but they all had Chinese music. So we did Qigong to the music that he'd put with the Qigong. And it was really interesting because it all worked and you flowed. And Chinese music wasn't my favorite thing, but now it's just a trigger to take me to that state if I hear that music. Very powerful.
And you don't have to have a particular formal Qigong practice, as we're alluding to. Qigong, the word just simply means energy work, or energy, working with the energy of the universe and your body. And you can do that out on the farm, in the office. Doesn't have to be formal. We all know the feeling of that effortless movement. Even if we've never heard of or practiced something called Qigong or Tai Chi, we've had moments when we just effortlessly move. We just find ourselves walking and there's just no effort there. And then we think about it and then the effort comes back in.
Bill, I was reflecting on my path as a physician. A physician, is someone who starts out with a white coat and a stethoscope, and it solidifies a sense of being separate, better than. I had an MD after my name, a Duke MD. And as I evolved as a physician, I didn't like that sense of being separate and more knowledgeable than, different from my patients. And so I started a little solo family practice called integrative healthcare in the 80s. And it was all built on the premise of listening. And so instead of having 5-minute appointments, I had an hour-and-a-half appointments. And so I found that in relationship to wu-wei, that when I let go of my white coat and I opened up my heart and my ears and just received, that even though I was practicing solo, I was never alone because I had the wisdom of the patient to inform me about next steps. And so I was reflecting on wu-wei as you were speaking today, and I realized it's a very healing medicine when we are less separate and more available with just our receiving aspects. And it guided me through my medical practice. And I had a wonderful couple decades practicing solo, and it allowed me to come into my dream of being Farmer Jim now. So.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Is there anyone here who would pay a good part of their income to have a doctor who spent an hour and a half with you? Yeah. Yes.
I'm
Go ahead,
fortunate to have one.
Oh.
She's wonderful. She can't do that all the time. Sometimes she's rushed and you get your 15, 20 minutes, but that works. Other times she's spent hour and a half, 2 hours. She talks about, I know her on a personal level too. And she knows me very personally beyond just, as a doctor. So yeah, I feel extremely fortunate.
That's lovely.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about these concierge doctors now, where they take, I don't know how many patients a normal internist have. I hear it's several thousand, and they cap themselves at 300, something like that. They charge a monthly fee to be a member, and then they claim they'll spend an hour or 2 hours with you if that's what you need. So I'm actually looking at doing that, but that's what. Jim, that's what triggered my thought.
Yeah. Many of my physician friends are saying, we think we're dissatisfied with healthcare. The bulk of physicians are terribly dissatisfied. And underneath all of the dysfunction, lots of innovative, creative things are starting to appear. Who knows what all the chaos may engender from deep roots of creativity and wu-wei of let's not put any more effort in trying to make this work. Let's do something else. Yeah. Steve,
I just wanted to pass on kudos to Jim. There are thousands of physicians out there, Jim, who know the science of medicine. Very few know the art of medicine. You obviously have the art of medicine, and that's terrific. So as I say, kudos to you, lad.
Jim, you're probably aware of the tradition that was in China for some decades, a few millennia ago, of the physician got paid as long as people were well.
Yeah.
That his job or her job was to keep you well, and when you got sick, then you didn't get paid until they got better.
Let's bring that back.
We'd have a doctor shortage if we're that way here. I was going to mention more on connection that Jim was talking about, connecting with his patients. As a professor, I love to do the same thing, and that's why face-to-face teaching was awesome.
Mhm.
I'm just right there with them. You can pick up all kinds of cues, their body language, their eye expression, all kinds of things that you can't do online, which, we were told we had to do. And that has its advantages too. But just having that connection was wonderful. I had a department chair years ago that said she wanted to get us all super tall chairs that we could put in the front of the room so that when people walked in, they would know who the teacher was. And I thought to myself, no one's ever had a problem figuring out that I'm the teacher. I think you have, a certain comportment, and you're the one that's guiding the class. You're walking around helping, that wasn't an issue. But it's easy for ego to come in sometimes. To think you're the sage on the stage rather than being a part of the experience with the students. And there's an energy exchange that takes place, and I get wisdom from them. And I think Jim was alluding to the same thing, that you learn so much from them and they guide you. And being open to that is part of what makes that interaction really positive and good for everybody.
Yeah. What happens is, whether you're a physician or a professor or whatever, when there's the connection, you live in a field of wisdom.
Yeah.
It's not your wisdom or their wisdom. It's this field of wisdom that then flows through both of you in complex and intertwined ways, and you just both live in that field for that time together. That's powerful. What you need is a robe, not just a high stool, but a robe.
Yeah, and some kind of crown.
Yeah, that's the
scepter.
the little flat hat,
Yeah.
The
Graduates.
you English people know you have your professors in robes, so you can tell them apart. Yes, Liz.
I was going to say, I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, wu-wei, through teaching, through being a therapist. And I used to have to work so hard to prepare my teaching and sit in front of people as a therapist, but then it just flowed, and it was sharing, and I was learning from them. They were learning from me. We were meeting each other's needs. There was no separation. We were all just in it together learning, and I don't always know. And I never felt lost or worried I couldn't deal with what came in front of me. I just trusted, and it just would flow what I needed to do. And I hadn't even thought about that again until now. It's just like you lay the foundation, and then it's effortless.
When I was a therapist, the insurance companies that my little private practice, there were 3 or 4 of us, worked with, had a fix in 6 rule. That is, you had 6 sessions with the client, and at the end of 6 sessions, they were out of insurance. You could, and so I think of Jim, you know, with the physician who feels that he or she has to fix somebody. Holy cow, what a burden. And after a couple of years, I made the decision to stop taking insurance. And the idea was that I'd end up under a bridge with a shopping cart if I stopped taking insurance. But it didn't happen. I put my rates down and everything was effortless. It was just wonderful. But for those years when I was caught up in the insurance industry, it was just, and I'm sure physicians have the same thing. Somehow we have to have a structure that allows us to move into the field of wisdom, the field of energy that permeates the universe, but to which we seldom allow ourselves access. Yes, Liz.
Just to follow up from that, so the clients I mentor work with are basically people who can't afford it, and I don't know how it happened, but I flowed. I am now part-time with a charity, and I get paid to do it. I get paid to work with people that could never afford or even think of therapy, which is my idea of heaven. It's the perfect way. And that flowed to me over a process of about 15, 20 years. I ended up in a place where now you're going to get paid to do the work you're meant to do.
Nice. Peter,
Bill, at a practical level, the world that surrounds us is increasingly one that seems to use fear as a technique for attracting attention and indeed for driving your actions. There is so many thousands and thousands of things that are part of everyday life, that whether it is the weather moving in, or whether it is the advertising, the algorithms, all of the things we know. At a practical level, I mean, you are now 77, and you are somebody who has been aware of the Tao Te Ching for a long time, and you're an extremely thoughtful man. And yet it is obvious that from what you say, even today, even this week, there is a tussle between what life deals you and your ability to handle it, and with wu-wei being I suppose the ideal way of handling it. How do you, given all that life puts in your way, how do you seek to, without striving, how do you seek to live a life that is more effortless, where wu-wei is more your guiding whatever than reactivity, fear, doubt, worry, efforting, all of those things? What practical things do you do? What would you suggest?
well, it's in one sense very individual, but I've had over the past 10 years especially, and felt it in a sense all my life, to recuse myself from most of what society says I need to be involved with. So I literally don't have any broadcast media. I don't read any newspapers. And when the inevitable hook from society through, you can't not see the fearful headlines or the fearful, because I use the internet, and you can't use the internet without somewhere over here in the corner somebody trying to get your attention with a red headline that tells you that the sky is falling. I've just developed the ability, most of the time, Peter, actually, to take a deep breath and recuse myself. That I get accused by my own inner conditioned mind that I'm avoiding or sticking my head in the sand, but I no longer believe that. I believe that and you've talked about this before in our conversations, Peter, that if what I'm involved in isn't sparking a sense of joy and peace, and isn't sparking a sense of belonging and courage within me, I don't want to have any part of it. It doesn't belong in my life. The old idea that you have to be aware of all these red headlines in order to somehow be prepared is like preparing for winter by another flashlight. You'll never have enough, you'll never have enough flashlights, ever. And we'll never be prepared enough. And you just, if it doesn't bring peace, if it's not sparking something joyful in me, I don't want to have any part of it. The paradox, and I mentioned it and we're talking about social activism, the paradox is that the person who's cultivating that spirit within themselves is the most helpful human being in a chaotic time, because their actions grow out of a sense of peace. I'm going to tell you a story that I used in a book that I wrote quite a long time ago called The Tao of Forgiveness. And it was about a woman who was in a hospital in I think Nigeria, dying of AIDS. And the first worker who was working with her was so filled with anger at the situation that allowed her to be in this hospital, that it was always about how terrible this is. And then the worker changed and another worker came in, and that worker just was there with a sense of love and peace, not trying to fix anything, not trying to blame anybody about anything, just, and the woman recounted that this is who she wants to be with her. Who do you want to be with you at a time of your death or your crisis, or who do you want there? The angry person, the frustrated person, the person filled with a sense of righteous indignation, or do you want the person who's there with peace? And so back to your question, Peter. If it doesn't strike peace, if it doesn't cultivate that, I don't want any. I issue it. I recuse myself from it. It doesn't mean I don't get caught. You know, sometimes the red headline will, oh my God, and down the rabbit hole I go. But I come back. Thank you, Peter.
I love your use of the verb recuse, and I'm realizing that it's an uncommon verb in my vocabulary. It's not something I learned in school anywhere. And I've been fascinated by the notion, you talked early on about our feeling separate and the fear it engenders and what takes us away from the present moment. And I've discovered for myself that clock time, the basic notion, the concept of clock time, often takes me out of the present moment because I'm worried about, I'm late or what I have to do. It projects me into the future. So as you were talking, I thought, now how can I recuse myself from clock time? Time, the way I see it, is the one it's given us freely and amply as we live. We don't have to get it from anywhere. It's just showing up, right? It's abundant, right? And if we could just live out of that abundance, we'd have time for each other. And time for being more present to our lives. So I'm going to try to recuse myself from clock time a little more.
Good idea. Good idea. The brain actually creates time and then creates clock time so that it can keep track of the time that it's created. But literally, present moment time is abundant. I mean, it's just abundant. But
I have a phrase in my in a prayer I use daily that says, "Thou art before time," and that really helps me because I realize that what is arriving is I don't know, I can rest in before time.
Before time and after time. Timeless. Wu-chi. And I just glanced over. Oh my gosh, we've only got 5 minutes left. Liz.
I play with time. I have a timeline and I pull it to me or I send it out and I slow it down, I speed it up, and sometimes there is no time. I don't have time to do something, but then I have endless time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just play with it and it happens. It kind of stops completely sometimes.
Mm-hmm. There's lots of testimony from, athletes, all people who sink into the present moment wu-wei. Time is flexible. And even from a quantum physics point of view, the physicist says time is a concept. And it's in a literal way, it's flexible. And part of the Tai Chi coming out of the Wu Chi, but in the Wu Chi, time's just Nancy, my dear spouse, is we call her a Western shaman, and I honor and value her practice. I don't understand it all the time because she can, and I believe her, step out to a degree outside of time. And I believe you, but I don't understand it. Yes, Lisa.
Yeah, I have the experience in my small family of different. Two of us are not on any time. We don't follow, not attached to an institution or a thing that takes our time. For example, my partner works, so he has some time structure. My daughter and I are here, and she's on her own completely different schedule of time, and that's really changed actually my health, my sleep, because I have living between those two, and with those two, we haven't had to. We've chosen to let go of. I don't have particular hours. She doesn't have particular hours. He does. We meet when we meet. We all eat at different times. We all sleep at different times often in different places. And so we have as a group, because it suited us, kind of let go of a lot of those, apart from when he has his work times. Mm-hmm. But quite often then he's away doing those somewhere else. And then she and I really just drift into a very different space of being together and being apart and having these moments of rhythm together where we come together. And it's really impacted all of our relationships in a really lovely way. It's uncomfortable at times because we have an awareness of how the rest of the world is living. But like, if you get up early, that's really good. If you work at certain times, that's really good. If you eat in a certain way, that's really, so we have an awareness of them. We don't live with any of them, which does make it difficult with external forces at times, but amongst us, it's really changed how we are together. It's really made a huge difference to our lives. Letting go of a lot of those ideas of what time dictates. I mean, it just doesn't for us at this point, and it has in the past. And we were talking about it with my daughter this morning, actually, about the rush involved in that process of this time needing to be there and rushing. We don't rush anywhere anymore. It's pretty great.
That's wonderful. That's just wonderful. And when your partner comes home, he comes into that atmosphere. And that's.
And then there's a bit of adjustment.
Well, yeah, but that's okay. We can make those adjustments.
Yeah.
If we live in a sense of timelessness or recusing ourselves from a lot of cultural ideas, we can step into them. We just don't take them with the seriousness that we used to attach to them. Do you know that we're out of time? Doreen, just go ahead.
Oh, just real quickly, I was going to say that letting go of structured time, I find makes life more joyful. We used to be that way in my department, and then a new dean came to the college and we were assigned to her, and it was just a whole new world. It was to the point I felt the need to go out and buy a watch that had a second hand. I mean, everything, seriously. So that flexibility with time, that sense of flow, the sense of honoring each other within that just went away. And it was, very militaristic. And the joy, a lot of the joy went away with it. So I really appreciate when someone has the sense of flow with time and realizes it's our construct. We made it, we can change it, with still respecting people's commitments. Anyway, that was my reaction to all that. And I thought I'd share it. It was kind of interesting. A watch with a second hand now
Yeah.
that I never wear anymore because I'm on leave.
Well, don't put it back on.
I'm not. I easily go without a watch. I mean, forever. I mean, I have my phone with me if I need to know the time. I can look, but I'm fine not knowing.
I'll close. I get the last word, I guess. I spent a decade of my life as a Protestant Presbyterian minister, and I worked for a large church. And in this spiritual institution, I was given by the governing board what do you call them? A daily planner. And I was asked to write my day in 15-minute increments of how I spent that day, so they would know how to evaluate me. Needless to say, this didn't lead to a long and healthy relationship with this particular institution. And to this day, when I see a daily planner, it just makes me scared to death. Any last minute observations that have been urgent for you to get to? Well, again, it's just such a delight to be with you. I'm guessing that next week's theme is going to be the yin and yang of life, the dark and the light, and the polarities, and how do we live in a world where those polarities seem so real and so ironclad. So that's probably where we'll go, but I make no real promises. And I'll put this conversation up as soon as it does all of the things it's supposed to do and gets up through technology. And just blessings to everybody. Thanks for being who you are.
Okay. Good
Hey,
day.
Bill.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.